Welcome to Your Brand Amplified, the podcast where we interview marketers, publicists, and brands to learn their stories, what makes them tick, and tips and tricks that make a difference. I am so excited to talk to the author of Brain Glue, James Bond. Fantastic name. I'm sure you get that a lot.
No, you're the first one this hour.
But also a really, really fascinating topic. I love talking about the motivations behind how people and why people take action. And you are a leading expert on behavioral management, a marketing specialist. You've done so many things in your career. So I'd love for you to share your journey with our audience.
Sure. Well, for 13 years, I ran a behavioral management firm, one of California's leading behavioral management firms. We work with a who's who of American business. And it was just awesome. I mean, we worked with just, you name it. Warren Buffett's team brought us in and brought me in and all that stuff. And we had senior, big companies like Amgen and Gannett Media and stuff like that. So we had lots of fun with that. But my journey started more than 35 years ago. I'm originally from Montreal. And in Montreal, I have a technical background, but I built an advertising agency. It took a while and we built it up and they loved our work. And we eventually won major clients like Kraft, Timex, Avon, Abbott Laboratories, Seagram's, their world headquarters is there. And so I won them as clients. And I'm a very logical person, which is actually a disadvantage, as I'll explain in a moment. Okay. But we had a unique opportunity to win the anti-drug campaign in America. And so we developed logical reasons why people shouldn't do drugs. And then I saw what beat us, and I was terrified. And it was a guy holding an egg saying, this is your brain, and cracking the shell and dropping it into a sizzling frying pan. This is your brain on drugs. Any questions? When I saw that, two things happened. The first one was I recognized it was a gazillion times better than anything we had. We had logical reasons. This was emotional selling. And I realized I didn't understand emotional selling, and it terrified me. How can I be in advertising or marketing or even life and not understand emotional selling? And it absolutely terrified me. Sleepless nights. And I just was like, what, have I picked the wrong career? And how can I not know this? I'm logical, but logic doesn't seem to be as powerful as emotional selling. And then I got this idea. I realized that school doesn't teach you emotional selling. I went to the library, and libraries have just superficial things, but they don't teach you emotional selling. And so I came up with this concept of a passion box. I created a box, put it next to my computer, and I said, this is a passion box. And I wrote down your brain on drugs. And I put it on a 3x5 card and I put it in my box. And I said, all I'm going to do is this. Every time I see something that's emotionally engaging, that's really powerful. And because eventually we ran a behavioral management firm, I always focused on not something that just gets your attention, but something that changes, that actually people start buying things. I'll give you an example so you understand this. People love the Got Milk campaign, right? Got Milk was a failure in marketing. Okay. Here's an article in Business Week about 10 years ago or so. It's called Got Milked. After $385 million, sales continue to decline. They never helped. And the reason is because Got Milk was a fun campaign. And I've got a Got Milk book and a Milk Mustache book. My kids had the Milk Mustache posters with famous people. It was fantastic. People used to get milk delivered to their doorstep. Why? Because it's loaded with calcium and it gives you strong bones and everything else. Okay. Well, then people started recognizing that they had lactose intolerance. Okay. And they also recognize that you can get calcium from spinach. You don't need milk for calcium. And you can get calcium pills, and things like that. And so if I come up with Got Milk and say, Got Milk, if you have lactose intolerance, you could love the concept and it could be lots of fun, but are you going to buy milk? No. Right. And so what happens, and I'm fascinated by this whole concept of what actually triggers action, and changes behavior, especially because with our behavioral management firm, they said we want people to tackle stuff outside their comfort zone, and we would do amazing things. We had one company, a major company, I won't say which, that actually brought us in because the senior execs wanted the CEO thrown out of the company, and they used us for that, tackling stuff outside their comfort zone. That was scary. I have a really good poker face. I'm like, really?
Oh my God.
Well, you're sure you want to do that? We did, which is really great. But anyway, but the point is going back to the Brain Glue concept. So this is your brain on drugs. Any questions? And I put it in the passion box. And I started putting things inside the passion box, including famous talks I mean, I grew up with President John F. Kennedy before he got assassinated, Martin Luther King and all that stuff. So, President Kennedy would say, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. And I went, wow, that's really powerful. I'm going to put that in my box, okay? Write it down, put it in my box. Malcolm X said, he's a black guy who is a civil rights activist. And he could have said, you have no idea, if you're white, you have no idea what we have gone through and what we have to go through. Okay, maybe it'll go in one ear and out the other. You've heard it before. What he said instead was, we didn't land on Plymouth Rock. The rock landed on us. And I was like, wow, that's powerful. There's something called chiasmus. I'll tell you about it in a second, but it's a flipping. That's like, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. It's a flip, okay? It's called chiasmus. He also had this great line. He said, if you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything. Okay, it resonates. It sticks to the brain like glue. We have famous comedians. I remember Mae West, who was really early in the entertainment industry, and she loved chiasmus. She would say things like, a woman likes a man with a past, but she prefers a man with a present. I thought that was hilarious. Good girls go to heaven, bad girls go everywhere. She was hilarious. Anyway, but the point was, so I started putting these things in my passion box. And I forced myself not to overanalyze. I put it in, I go, okay, it is really powerful. I'm hoping I'm going to be able to eventually one day take them out and see if I can group them and understand what are emotional triggers, what are mental triggers. And I've learned a lot about mental triggers since then, okay? After we moved to California, I met John Gray. John Gray wrote a book called Men, Women, and Relationships. Phenomenal. One of the best relationship books on the planet, okay? But he was frustrated. And why was he frustrated? Because he sold like about 20,000 copies. He didn't sell a lot. When you spend a year writing a book and everything else, 20,000 copies isn't that much. And so he's doing a presentation to promote his book. And suddenly he says something, and all the women in the audience laugh hysterically. And all the men in the audience turn to women and go like, what was so funny about what he just said? So he said, see, there are some things that women find really funny and some things that men find really funny that are different. And of course, there are things that we all find funny. And so one of the women said, it's almost like men are from a different planet. And he said, yeah, I guess men are from Mars. Okay. And everybody laughed hysterically. When he got home, he said, well, if men are from Mars, where are women from? I guess women are from Venus. Venus is the god of love. And then he got this crazy idea. What if I change the title of my book to Men are from Mars, Women are from Venus?
Yeah.
And, and keep it the same book, but do references to it throughout the book. Okay. So what do you think happened? Overnight, okay, he went from 20,000 copies to 500,000, a million, 2 million, 10 million. You know how many books he sold? 50 million copies of Men are from Mars, Women are from Venus. He went from 20,000 to 50 million just by changing the title? Wow. And so when I got home, I had a copy of the book, and I'm like, I had a copy of both of the books, actually, Men, Women, Relationships, too. But I had a copy of Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. I was going to put it in my passion box, and I stopped and I said, no, this is too powerful. This has got to be the lever for me, the catalyst that gets me taking all the stuff out. So I took my bed, and I dumped all the box on my bed. I've been doing this for 35 years. So you can imagine how many things I saved.
Your box had to grow, I imagine.
My wife hated going to doctor's offices with me. Yeah, I'm terrible. Because I would go through and I start reading a magazine and go, oh, wow, this is fantastic. She said, do not tear it out of the magazine. No, I have to. No, she would sit as far away from possible. I do not know that guy. And I tear this thing out of the magazine. Because every time I'd see something that was profound, I would save it. In McDonald's, I went to McDonald's restaurant when they did, would you like fries with that? What I discovered was on the front for us customers, it says, would you like fries with that? And it shows the fries. On the back, it says, would you like fries with that? Just the words. So the person who's at the cash register, they don't get the picture. They just get the words. Would you like fries with that?
Nice.
And so I would say, hey, can I get a copy of this? They said, we're not supposed to give you a call, please. All right, fine. Hang on. We got an extra one. And they gave me a copy. So my passion box was packed. Okay. But when I dumped it on the bed, I started to recognize that there are patterns that things go into. So Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus is an analogy or a metaphor, okay? We're not really from another planet. At least I don't think we are. Maybe we are, but that's a whole other story. But I realized, oh, wow, okay. So then I looked at, Shark Tank, the TV show. It isn't like a tank full of sharks. It might feel like it when you're on Shark Tank, but it's not. If they call it the investors group, you think it would be as popular as Shark Tank?
Yeah.
No, there's something that happens that triggers the brain. It's internationally famous and successful, called Shark Tank, using a metaphor or analogy. So I remember I was watching something on Discovery Channel about Rocky Road ice cream, which made Dreyer's ice cream, turned them into they were struggling, and when they came out during the Great Depression. And so what happened was, during the Great Depression, they launched Rocky Road ice cream, and they took them from a struggling company to a massively successful company. Huh. And so there are 3 brain glue tools that they used, okay? They didn't call it brain glue back then, but they did this. So the first thing is Rocky Road. It's not like you open it up and you get a bunch of rocks inside it.
Right.
It's chocolate ice cream with nuts and marshmallows, but it's bumpy like a rocky road. And so calling it Rocky Road was kind of cool, and it would attract people's attention.
Yeah.
It also used something called alliteration, which is the repetition of sounds. Rocky Road. And then I started discovering, look at all the major monster brands that use alliteration. Coca-Cola, PayPal, Lululemon, TikTok.
Interesting.
I mean, is it a coincidence? I mean, think of TikTok. If they call it the Chinese social media, you think it would no. But TikTok, TikTok, you're not, it's easy to remember. It sticks to the brain. Rocky Road also uses humor, and humor is a powerful tool as well. Okay. And so humor works this way. Rocky Road was launched during the Great Depression. The Great Depression was called Rocky Road. We're all on a rocky road. Okay. And so their concept was, we're all on a rocky road. We might as well have Rocky Road ice cream, which is kind of funny, make people laugh during hard times. And so humor works really well too. They have this guy, Paul Tran. I started recognizing this. So Paul Tran, going to analogy or metaphor, okay? He created an electric razor for men to shave their private areas, okay? And he wanted to come up with a name that wouldn't offend people, but would be clear what the product is.
Okay.
And he was thinking about it. Then he came up with lawnmower. It's just like a lawnmower. He actually named the product the lawnmower.
Oh, no.
And it was hilarious, but he sold like hundreds of millions. I mean, he's become massively successful with this product. And it's one of those things that, it's like Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. I remember I was in a store and I went, okay, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. That's funny. And I picked it up. You pick it up, that's on your way to buying it, okay? So with the lawnmower, people would start laughing. We go, okay, fine. And if somebody would buy it, say, guess what I just bought? The lawnmower. Check this out. It's called, and you share it, and it becomes viral. So I had this woman who said to me, okay, you're an expert in brain glue. Can you help me with my kids? I'm like, okay, She says, let me tell you. So I've got twins, young twins, and I've got a 14-year-old son. So my twins, I'll read a story to them, and then they want me to read another one, and they never go to bed. It's driving me nuts. And so I said, okay, so let's come up with a poem. So when the story's read, I go to bed, okay? So let's try that one. So she tried it on her kid. She said, okay, so you want me to read you a story, guys? Okay, when the story's read, we go to bed. So when the story's read, what? We go to bed, Mommy. Okay, great. And she says, okay, and she read the story and said, Mommy, another one. When the story's read, okay, we go to bed, Mommy. And then she came back and said, hey, it worked. It was like, wow, it worked. So now you have to help me with my other son. It's like, okay, because I have to know what they're going to throw at me. So my 14-year-old son says, Mommy, why do we have to follow so many rules in life? It's a really tough question. So I went, okay, so what rhymes with rules? Fools. So only fools don't follow rules. There's a good one to start with. Okay, so we can use that, but let's also give them an analogy or a metaphor so that, it'll strengthen it. And then we came up with one. So I sat down with her and her son. And I said, so you were asking your mom why we have to follow so many rules in life, right? He said, yeah. I said, well, when you're thirsty, you could drink out of the toilet, but why would you want to? Remember, only fools don't follow rules. And then he turns to me and he goes, that makes sense. When does a 14-year-old ever say anything makes sense? I want to know that one. I escaped quickly before he asked another question, by the way. But the point is, did it really make sense? Or did I trigger things in the brain?
Yeah.
And so here are two political comments that sort of exemplify this, okay? You can't hug a child with nuclear arms. That's powerful, even though it's not logical, okay?
Right.
You can't hug a child, so now you're relating to it emotionally with nuclear arms.
Yeah.
I mean, so you're putting things together, even though it's not logical, it's emotional and it triggers the brain. So how about this one? And I'm not pro or con. I don't want to get into the gun control and everything else, but I'm impressed by this. This was really powerful. And it's a joke. And it's the right to bear arms is almost as crazy as the right to arm bears.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. It's like, what? And I see people going like, oh, yeah, huh, what? Okay. But it triggers the brain.
Yeah.
It triggers parts of the brain. And when it triggers parts of the brain, when I first discovered brain glue, I started to understand how things fit together. So I was introduced from a bank that I had worked with to a construction company. And there are three guys who had a construction company in Glendale, California. And I had no experience with the construction companies. But I knew the power of brain glue, and I figured, hey, let me try it on my client. I teach it with U.S. Small Business Administration. So we've had over 1,000 people that have learned it and come back and give me their examples of how it worked and everything, which is kind of fun. You get to get feedback. But so I figured, let me try it on this client. And so these guys, after 10 years, had $2 million of sales. They worked hard, and it's not bad. $2 million of sales is pretty good. In 1 year, I took them from 2 million to 10 million in sales. They actually razzed me. They said, hey, it was supposed to be 12 million, Bob. I said, shut up. As they bought each other the biggest BMW you could possibly have, for each one of it, bought each other presents. But they went to 32 million 2 years later because of this. Okay, so let me tell you what I did.
Yeah.
So the first thing I did was I pulled out a whiteboard, which is really funny because a lot of people say this. We don't need whiteboards. If you bring on a whiteboard, when you're done, you can take it with you. Eventually, when they see how powerful it is, they go, do not take that. Yeah. We need that. I got it. Okay. So I got them to, let's make a shopping list of all the different types of clients you go after. Okay. Mm-hmm. And their construction company was open to anybody walked in the door. If you want to build a stream of homes, we'll do that. If you want to build a manufacturing facility, we'll build it. They'll build. We want to build a single home, we'll do it. We want to add a thing onto a home. They'll do anything. Okay. And so I made a shopping list. And it took them quite a while to come up with it because they say, oh, wait, was this one also and that one, all that stuff. We created this shopping list of all these different types of businesses. So I said, okay, now here's the game we're going to play. I want you to focus on a single type of client and nobody else. Mm-hmm. And they were like, no, we can't do that. You want us to turn away business? Well, this is a game. Let's go through this, okay? We're going to pick one type of client. If you only focused on one, who would it be? It took them a while. And then they said, fire restoration for insurance companies, which I didn't know back then, but I know what it is now. So an insurance company.
Big business in California.
Yeah, exactly. Welcome to California. That's right. Exactly. And there are things like in the house, the first thing you want to check is the frame. If the frame is damaged, you got to tear down the whole house. But if it's not, you can build it. You want to make sure the fire is not going to happen again. So understand what it is. And there's this whole process. And they said, no, it would be actually fun if we did fire restoration for insurance companies. So now going to Brain Glue, I said, okay, then why don't we come up with a name that is going to resonate, is going to stick to the brains of your clients, okay, that you talk to and your prospects. And so I said, so fire restoration, so it's fire. Fire is a word, is a good word. Let's make fire the part of it. Okay. So I said, you guys are the fire extinguisher for insurance companies, nice. Okay? We'll call it Fire X, and so they can find you easily online. But you'll be the fire extinguisher for insurance companies. So when you're walking in and talking to them, just say, hey, we're your fire extinguisher. When you have a client that has a fire, you bring us in and we're the ones that fix it for you.
Wow.
And just by calling it the fire extinguisher and just focusing on that narrow niche, they went from 2 million to 10 million to 32 million. And it just exploded. In fact, one of the partners said to me, okay, you're so smart. I always go, no, I'm not. Thanks. John Gray, who did Men from Mars, Women from Venus, he always said, do not tell people you're an expert. I'm supposed to be an expert in man-woman relationships, and I go home and my wife proves that I am not. I'm a specialist. So I always say I'm a specialist, not an expert, okay? But as I started to recognize how powerful this is, I started applying it to different types of businesses and different types of people. There's famous talks like Warren Buffett uses it, okay? Warren Buffett uses an analogy all the time. I love this one, okay? He says, only when the tide goes out do you discover who's been swimming naked. No, he's not talking about naked swimmers, by the way. He's talking about people in business. Only when times get hard. Yeah. So if he said, only when times get hard do you discover who's really not very competent, that goes in one ear and out the other. But if you say,
right.
When the tide goes out, do you discover who's been swimming naked? It's like, because it triggers different parts of the brain. And it resonates. Yeah. And that's why he's loved. He's got a partner, and it's him that everybody asks for, not his partner, because he's, fun to talk to. He's got these great things, but it's a Brain Glue related tool.
Yeah. Well, and I love.
And just by the way, last thing on this one. So then one of the things I put in the box was O.J. Simpson's murder trial. And what's the phrase that Johnny Cochran used?
If the glove fits.
If the glove don't fit, you must have quit. Okay.
Yeah.
So, I had somebody saying this and he screamed, no, stop. It's when the glove. I have to tell you what it is. But it sticks to the brain. It's like, I remember Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. I remember when I was a kid, we had that. Our little Bo Peep lost it. I remember these things. Last time I heard it, for me, I'm old. Okay, I'm really old. I'm really old. I heard it over 60 years ago. And so on my deathbed, if somebody said Jack and Jill went, I would finish it I'd remember it because it sticks to the brain. Rhyme sticks to the brain. So Johnny Cochran recognized with O.J. Simpson, there was tons of evidence against him. But he had O.J. faking how he was having trouble putting on the gloves. So it was hard to put on a glove. As he kept repeating to the jurors, remember, if the gloves don't fit, you must acquit. And I remember after the trial, a journalist was interviewing two of the jurors. And one of them was answering while the other one was nodding her head. And the journalist asked, with so much evidence against him, why did you acquit O.J. Simpson? And she said, what do you think she said? Well, we knew if the glove don't fit, you must acquit. The glove didn't fit. We had to acquit, It's so powerful that not only does it sell products and services, but it actually gets a guy off from a murder trial. Oof. Yeah, that's how powerful this is. Sorry, I'm blabbing away, but I love it.
No, it's fascinating. I love this because every day I'm living in the world of marketing, PR, branding. And so much of what we do to figure out what we want to do for a client is the data analysis. We do the competitive analysis, SWOT analysis. We look at their SEO. We look at their website, the links, backlinks, what's working, what's not working. We look at their competitors on social. We look at their social and how they're performing. We take all the data analysis, or like if we work for workforce development and education, we'll look at the demographics of a community. And then we do the psychographics to drill down to specific programs that we want to market. And then we have to figure out what those messages are, right? And
so hang on a second. I want to tell you this, okay? Because this is related to all this. And I come from this too. You're logical. You're looking at all the logical things. And they discovered there's something in neuroscience called Hebb's Law, which is neurons that fire together, wire together, okay? There are also two famous scientists, this guy, Gerald Zaltman, who is at Harvard University, a Harvard University business professor, and it was Daniel Kahneman, who's a Nobel Prize-winning psychologist. And they both discovered and demonstrate that more than 90% of decisions are made with the triggering the emotion side of the brain. Now, we say no, like, trust. Okay, I got that. So if a person likes you or trusts you, then you're triggering the emotion side. But if that's all you're depending on, it's scary. Yeah. So Hebb's Law says in neuroscience, neurons that fire together, wire together. It also explains that if you hit somebody with logic, throw numbers at them, it turns off the emotion side of the brain and makes it harder to sell them.
Yeah, we have to take that data analysis, but we have to turn it into storytelling. And that's my side is more of the PR side of how do we then message to whether it's a consumer, a journalist, the customer personas that you were talking about distilling down to. So I really love what you're talking about and what you've discovered and what you're sharing with us today, because you found this in your own career. The data was important. The logical side is important, but it's how you get the emotional side, how you pull the emotion out and how you make those connections. And what I really want to say is that you're helping not just me, but the audience reframe how we're thinking about those emotional messages that we're conveying to get consumers in the door. So
and to get moms to get their kids.
Well, this is another episode
also,
where my daughter wants to be a neuroscientist. And so she's very logical, but I'm like, she's going to be reading this book.
It's funny because I have this head of neuroscience in Switzerland who contacted me. He's got this organization with hundreds of neuroscientists from around the world. And he wants me talking. I said, I'm not a neuroscientist. No. What you're saying is too important. We need to share this with neuroscientists.
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
Because it's amazing. I mean, how the brain works, So I wrote the book, to try to get referrals and get people who like the book. If they like it, then hopefully it'll give me some referrals. And I shared it with Jack Canfield, who wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul. Chicken Soup for the Soul, he sold 100 million copies of Chicken Soup for the Soul and 400 million copies of the other Chicken Soup for the teenage soul, for the cancer survivor's soul, etc. So 500 million books. So he doesn't need me telling him anything, right? So he's looking at my book and he told me, you got me so pissed off. And I said, I'm sorry. I was just going to glance at the thing and I couldn't put the damn book down. And it's like, well, thank you. And I'm sorry. What can I say? But I have to tell you something. So I want to tell you this. The original title of the book, and this is a problem that logical people have. The original title of the book was Sell More with the Right Brain Marketing Strategy. Left brain. And he said, how dare you? You're getting all of us to go right brain and you have a left brain title for your book. Your book is all about brain glue. You need to change the title. And on Amazon, we try to get like over 100, lots of reviews because it triggers our algorithms and stuff like that. And I'm like, do I have to? He says, yes. You forced me to read this book. You have to do that. I'm giving everybody in my company, I'm requiring that they read this book, which is kind of cool. Yeah. So can I say that?
That's really cool.
But he said, but you have to change the name to Brain Glue because this is not about left brain title. It's a right brain title. I said, okay,
I mean, but the funny thing is you're exploring all of these concepts and ideas and figuring out this brain science. But then when it came to coming up with your own book title, you reverted back to your old ways until somebody else could point out that, wait, no, why are you not using this? This is catchy. I mean, I see Brain Glue and I'm like, oh, tell me more, right? Mm-hmm. Definitely, there's a much more visceral reaction to that title.
Well, also, people couldn't remember the title because it was
Right,
too
it was so
long.
long.
I'm referring your book. I can't even remember the title of it. Like, sorry.
Oh my God.
Brain Glue is designed for everybody, but for logical people so that you have a toolkit and they're easy tools. I have some examples. So people go, oh, wow, really fun. Like the Open Kettle. And he started a donut shop and like nobody was coming in the door. And he said, well, he changed the name. What do you think he changed the name to? Dunkin' Donuts.
I had a feeling you were going to
as
say
they're
that.
putting up the sign, people are lining up to come into the place, But what happens is we're logical. And so I always say, come up with logical things first. Come up with like a metaphor, just like, or my idea is just like, and be as crazy as possible. They ain't a lawnmower guy. I mean, it's not a lawnmower, but be as crazy as possible and then share that with people first. And people are amazed, But because we're so logical, people want to say, well, it's just like a truck. It's just like a this. Go out of the box. Think of something even crazier. Whoever thought of this is your brain on drugs, any questions? And yet, because I remember the statistics on it, it was profound that it actually impacted people. It actually lowered the drug rate, the number of people who were doing drugs. It's changed since then and they don't really promote it now. But it's for me, stuff like that is powerful because understanding how it triggers the different parts of the brain. And if you can trigger the different parts of the brain when you say something, like Shark Tank, hey, want to watch Shark Tank? Well, what's that? It shows with people, blah, blah, blah. Oh, that sounds cool. And now you're going to remember Shark Tank. It's just like when you use the tools, that's great. And I always say, don't turn off your logic. Start with your logic. Okay. And now go through this. And it's short. So it's not it's an easy book to go through, but go through this and you'll pick tools that you want to do that, that you want to apply this to. And you pick a tool and it's got an exercise. So you can apply this and you go, oh, and of course, when you hear a bunch of analogies, then it's easier to come up with your own. I've got jokes, I'd rather have a bottle in front of me than a frontal lobotomy. It's chiasmus. Even comedians use it. What can I say? It's fun. I have one that is like, my wife is like so mad. She does not want me doing this, but I'll say it. So, sorry, Pam. I want to change the world, but first I have to change my underwear. It's like, what? She goes, do you have to really? Having a trick ending at the end of it. Oh, can I give you a really good example of Marilyn Monroe? So there's something called redintegration, and that's a key tool that I take advantage of and that everybody can. Redintegration, not reintegration, but redintegration is the brain's need for completion, okay? It's like why we watch crappy movies to the end. I went into the room the other day and my wife was watching a TV show. I said, hey, is this any good? She said, no, it's terrible. So why are you watching it? I want to see how it works, how it resolves, how it works out. Okay. So what's the most powerful tool of human interaction that exists? I'm using it now, aren't I? Can you tell what I'm doing? What am I doing? Am I doing questions, aren't I?
Yeah.
Questions are the most powerful tool of human interaction because they take advantage of redintegration. Because when we hear a question, our brain goes, we have to answer it. I talk to an audience of 300 people and I'll start explaining this to them and then they'll stop nodding. I say, you're answering it, aren't you? Are you going to answer it again? Yeah. They said, now you're going to answer it? No. I said, I think in your brain, you're still answering it, aren't you? And they go, yeah, okay. It's programmed into us, redintegration, okay? Which like symmetry. So Marilyn Monroe, Norma Jean, one of her managers said, you should change your name to Marilyn. And then her stepfather's name Monroe. So she got Marilyn Monroe, which is alliteration. Marilyn Monroe, a repetition of sound. She loved Jean Harlow. And Jean Harlow, who was an early actress, who was very famous. And so Jean Harlow had platinum blonde hair. So Marilyn went to the same hairdresser that did Jean Harlow's hair and had her hair colored exactly the same color. That was really great. But Marilyn has a beauty mark on her cheek. And so she covered it up with makeup. So one day she's looking at photographs of Jean Harlow and she goes, wait a second. Jean Harlow in some photographs has the birthmark on her cheek and sometimes it's on her chin. And she goes, I bet she doesn't even have a beauty mark. I bet she's just putting the beauty mark on her face to attract attention. It's asymmetry. It's like when you have a mark on your face, oh, you might as well put an arrow, And so she put the mark on her face and she believed that it was one of the things that helped her become massively successful.
Huh.
Okay. In fact, I think it was one of the movies, Some Like It Hot, or one of them, that she played with the audience and she covered up that beauty mark and she put it on her cheek and she put it on her chin just for having fun. So Cindy Crawford, who's a supermodel, Cindy Crawford was telling a story of how she has a big birthmark above one side of her lips. Okay. And when she was a kid, she begged her mom, Mommy, can you take me to the doctor to get it removed? And she says, right now, I am so glad my mom didn't get it removed because I believe having that beauty mark helped me become a supermodel and stand out from everybody else. And it's like, whoever thought of it? I was watching Gilligan's Island and Ginger has a beauty mark like right in the middle of her face. And when I say, do you remember Ginger from the Gilligan's Island? Does she have a beauty mark? Yep, it's right there. People can actually tell me where it is, which is really funny. And what made me think of this first and started researching that was David Ogilvy, who's one of the early major advertisers. Okay, he's really fabulous. So he had to do an ad for Hathaway shirts. And so how do you do an ad for Hathaway shirts? Okay, you have a good-looking guy wearing one of the shirts and nice pants and shoes and in a nice environment, right? So what did he do? He decided to use asymmetry and he put an eye patch on the guy. It's like you're looking at ads all the time for shirts and you see a guy with an eye patch. What's that? That's, and he didn't look like a pirate. It was a nice looking groomed eye patch, but it is an eye patch because he understood the power of asymmetry. Like, there's a famous joke that uses asymmetry. So you expect the end and it changes the end. So fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, congratulations. Okay, a lot of people go, fool me twice, shame on me. And so this whole concept, even visually, asymmetry with Marilyn Monroe and Cindy Crawford and others believed that it helped them become famous because it put, Marilyn Monroe said, I'm more famous than Jane Mansfield. And part of it is because of my beauty mark. She never had a beauty mark. She didn't understand that. It's like, okay. When you start to understand how the brain works and how these things fit in, it becomes more profound, especially you're in advertising or PR. The more we understand about these things, the more we go like, oh, interesting. In this day and age, we have a lot of people that want to help change the world and make the world better. It's a crazy world and things and all that stuff. And so not only just helping clients, that's why I got involved in trying to do the anti-drug campaign, which I didn't get actually, but for good reason. But, in the first place, we want to pay it back. One of my favorite movies is Pay It Forward, But if we want to do that, then the more we can use these tools, it's like, hey, like Malcolm X said, we didn't land on Plymouth Rock, the rock landed on us. And it resonates so much that people remember it. They can repeat it to other people. If you have a product you're trying to sell, it's the same thing. It's like, you have a product to sell, like Squatty Potty, okay? There was a husband and wife in Utah who had no business experience. And in the bathroom, they figured out this thing that you have a little stool that you can sit on. And when you're on the toilet, that helps the body shape so that it's easier. I don't want to get too much into that. But then what do you call it? Well, in 2 years, they went from $0 to $100 million. Now, they got on Shark Tank, but in 2 years, they went from $100 million. Even on Shark Tank, they were fascinated by it. It's just a simple stool. My wife uses a trash can upside down, And yet they sold over $100 million of it because it's Squatty Potty. If it was called the toilet stool, you think it would be successful?
No.
No. The Squatty Potty, it sounds fun. Yeah. And it's interesting. It's got alliteration. It's got rhyme, and it's fun. And it's easy to remember and it's easy to share with other people. And so once we start understanding the mechanics of how the brain works, then we can start applying some of the things that we know and have to that, if you have an awesome product, wouldn't it be terrible if you get beat by a crappy product, but they have a better message?
Yeah.
It's annoying. If you have an important message or a great product that you're passionate about, you want to come up with a way to say it in such a way so you don't have to give them a novel to explain what the product is. You just Squatty Potty. Squatty Potty, yes, look at this. The lawnmower. I know I keep coming back to the lawnmower, but anyway, because I thought that's like hilariously nuts. Sometimes it takes courage to come up with the names too, but it makes a big difference.
Yeah. Interesting. Now, I know that you do a lot of speaking. I'm assuming you still speak for the Small Business Administration.
Oh, yeah. It's lots of fun. And I'll get like hundreds of people there. And I get this old lady who's like 88 years old. And she comes up to my wife and me at a grocery store. Oh, I have to tell you what your husband had us doing. She gets buttons from around the world. They're really cool buttons, from deepest, darkest Africa and Malaysia and stuff like that. So they don't even look like buttons. And I helped her with brain glue and with some other things because of the Small Business Administration. It's so much fun to help. And, we have to give back as much as we can. Of course, I hope people buy the book.
Yeah, but I think it's also, that's a resource that a lot of people don't realize. They think of SBA, they think of loans. They don't think about all the other resources that as entrepreneurs and small businesses, you can access amazing trainings and amazing trainers. And I will use the word expert for you, James. Okay. But you get to hear from people who, James, as you've said, you've had huge, major business conglomerates as clients before. So I'm just encouraging everybody who's listening, definitely check out Small Business Administration, see what's available in your area or virtual workshops, things like that, because you will get to hear from people who want to give back, who've had amazing, successful careers, worked with the top of the top. And I know if you're where I am, where you've had maybe multiple entrepreneurship journeys, different businesses, and you often may feel like you're still in that infancy stage or the kid stage, you haven't gotten to the adult stage of your business, use these resources. This is a way to propel your business forward and take things like this, read Brain Glue, and think about how you can turn that data and your customer profiles, how you can use these concepts to do better, to like come up with that hook that's going to make people remember how you're different than everybody else there in the market.
Well, and also with the Small Business Administration, a lot of people don't realize how lonely it is being in business. You know, you're in business for yourself, even if you have a spouse or a significant other or something like that. You know, it helps a lot to be able to bounce your ideas off somebody and get feedback and brainstorm and stuff like that. Because there is a tremendous loneliness, especially in these days and age. You know, I have people sit in front of a computer all day, and that's my whole business. I'm on the computer all day. Well, who do you get to talk to? Well, not really a lot of people. But it was fun to talk to somebody who isn't trying to make money off you, trying to sell you something, but just is going to bounce ideas off you. And that's what, through the Small Business Administration, you get a lot of people who are just trying to give back. You know, often they're retired and they've become I have a friend who sold a business in Simi Valley, California for $38 million. And he's got all this money. He's traveling around the world, but that's not what he wants. Yes, he does that too. And he has this 100-country goal. He wants to visit 100 countries. He went to just like some of the scariest countries on the planet. And it sounds like, why would you go there? But in fact, I kidded him because I said, oh yeah, you went to Africa, right? You probably, you know, in air conditioning and everything else. He said, no, I was in a tent. Yes, it had air conditioning, but it was like, okay, there we go. Yeah. You know, but he wanted to give back. And we've learned so much if we're successful. You know, we've tried stuff and it works and we had really good success. You know, if you're not going to give back, then, you know, you're just missing a great opportunity. You know, I mean, it's wired into us. I think we want to help if we can.
Yeah. So James, are you still working with clients and businesses individually?
Well, I'm old. I like to say that, but it's true. No, but I do somewhat, and I do coaching for people. But I'm focusing on the book Brain Glue because it's touched so many people, and it's local because I do coaching and training of people in Southern California. And that's fun. It's really rewarding. It's fun because I get people coming back a second and third time to the same one. It reinforces it, you know, and then they get to bounce ideas off me and all that stuff. So I do some coaching, but mostly I'm just, you know, trying to get the word out as far as Brain Glue is concerned, and people can learn it. And if you learn this and you start enjoying this, share it with other people too. It's really fun.
So I know that if you go to braingluebook.com, that'll take us to Amazon to purchase the book. Do you also have it on Audible for those of us who... Okay,
yes.
Perfect.
So if you go to braingluebook.com, you can go to Audible too. It's on Audible. But if you go to braingluebook.com, it'll take you to Amazon. And whether you buy the book or not, Amazon lets you look at a bunch of pages, but it also has the Audible sample. And we have this fantastic, he's hilarious narrator. His name is Johnny Unitas. And he's hilarious. And so we have a sample Johnny Unitas gives of a Canadian city that came up with a slogan that was so amazing that Madonna and the Rolling Stones actually repeat it to their audiences when they're doing a rock concert. And by the way, it tripled their tourism. Okay. It's like a hole in the wall city, but it tripled their tourism. But it's a really funny story. But they apologized after 3 years, after people have t-shirts and bumper stickers with it. And they said, well, we're sorry. You know, we apologize for it. We didn't think anyone would be opposed to it or whatever. So like, yeah, right. After you tripled your tourism, well, I get it, you know. Yeah. But they came up with a funky phrase. I set people up so you can think of it before they think of it, you know? And it's really hilarious. If you go to braingluebook.com and just click on the audiobook sample, then you can actually hear this story. It's a short story, but people think it's hilarious.
Very cool. Well, is there anything else you'd like to share today with the audience on ways for them to think about, you know, these alliterations, these mnemonics, these different things that you can institute right now in your business? Of course, we want people to go to check out your book, but if there's anything that somebody can take away right now and take action on, what would that be?
So come up with a metaphor or analogy for your business. And here's how you do it, okay? Or your idea. But if we were talking about people in business, so you pick a product and say it's just like, and be as crazy as possible, okay? I mean, we had a behavioral management firm and it was complicated, some of the things we did. So we came up with an analogy and we said, it's just like a personal trainer. You know, a personal coach. You know, you can do maybe 10 push-ups, but a personal coach will get you to do 30 push-ups by egging you on and everything else. Well, we use psychology, but we come into your company and we'll get your senior execs to tackle stuff a little out of their comfort zone, just like a personal trainer. So think of us as a personal trainer. Right. And they went, oh, that makes sense. And suddenly it made sense. Well, think of your own product or service and finish this phrase. It's just like, but think outside the box. Go crazy ideas. The crazier, the better. And then once you get crazy ideas, either you'll pull it back or you'll share it with people and go, go like, hey, that's actually not a bad one for us to do because, makes people laugh.
Yeah.
And buy and make people buy.
Exactly.
That's what's really good.
Yeah. Fantastic.
And then you'll laugh.
Yes. And you've shared a lot of great content, a lot of quotes. Do you have a favorite quote, mantra, words of wisdom that you live by?
Well, I had to come up with one for Brain Glue. So I'll say, you want to light the fire of desire in your buyer.
Oh, nice. Fantastic. James, thank you so much. This has been really delightful. I know that I will say I haven't bought your book yet, but I'm going to go do it right now, the Audible version, because it's easier for me to listen to things when I'm running around town with my daughter. But I just love what you're doing. I love that you're pouring so much back into entrepreneurs and small businesses with the workshops that you're doing and everything else. And I'm excited to keep in touch. I know that the audience is going to get a lot of value out of this and out of the work that you're doing. Thank you for delightful conversation.
Thank you so much. It was fun. Lots of fun.
It was really fun. And to our audience, thank you for coming back for another episode of Your Brand Amplified. I'm Annika Jackson here with James Bond, author of Brain Glue. I will be back again in another few days with another amazing expert to share all of their knowledge with you. And until then, have a fantastic week. Want more? Check out amplifywithannika.com or follow me on socials at Amplify with Annika.